Welcome to Hello Therapy, a podcast to help you take charge of your mental health through evidence-based psychological tips and tools straight from the therapy room so that you can live life better. Are you and your partner prepared for the emotional shifts and challenges that come with welcoming a new baby? Or are you finding yourselves drifting apart in the whirlwind of parenthood? I am your host, Dr. Liz White, consultant clinical psychologist, and today I'm chatting to Dr. Naomi Gibson, perinatal clinical psychologist, about the roller coaster ride of relationships when that little bundle of joy comes into the picture. We're exploring the common struggles and adaptations that new parents face, offering insights and strategies to maintain connection and intimacy. So whether you are just about to embark on parenthood for the first time, or you have become a family of 4 or more, this episode reveals how couples can navigate the often choppy waters of being parents and a couple at the same time. And if you want some quick, practical ideas on how to connect with your partner, even when there are children in the picture, check out our 50 micro moments of connection available for download on the Hello Therapy Substack. The link is in the show notes. So let's dive in. Dr. Naomi, thank you so much for coming on the Hello Therapy podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
We are going to talk about couples and how couples' relationships can change when they have a baby, aren't we? It's a really important topic. I have a lot of clients who have babies, and one of the things that comes up a lot is the changes that happen in your relationship. And sometimes people are anticipating that and sometimes they aren't. So it'd just be really great to get your expertise on that. But do you want to start by telling us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Naomi Gibson. I'm a clinical psychologist and I work particularly in the perinatal period. So that's sort of birth, conception, birth, and pregnancy, and sort of early years parenting. And yeah, I offer sort of one-to-one and couples and group therapy for mums. And whilst I was just sort of doing so much individual therapy, particularly around things, around birth and women struggling with their mental health after birth, what kept coming up so many times was these sort of relationship challenges and issues and lots of kind of similar themes around that. And it got me a bit more interested in that area and been sort of offering a lot more couples therapy, focusing on becoming parents or the challenges that you come across in this sort of new way of being a couple. And finding it really, really satisfying and fulfilling and interesting work.
Because it is that, isn't it? It is a new chapter, isn't it, in a couple's life. What would you say are some of the biggest changes that couples go through when they have a baby?
Yeah, it's a massive transition, I think. And whilst we expect there to be a change, you're going to go from a couple into a parent couple, I don't know that we always know what that's going to bring along with it. So if you're kind of a regular couple, you're likely, working outside the home separately, maybe having separate friendship groups or hobbies or things like that. And suddenly when there's a new baby, you often become a lot more in each other's space, literally a lot more at home perhaps, or having to kind of renegotiate a lot of the change in roles as you become parents and sort of work out what that means. Yeah, and that coupled with the fact that we know, I think, that relationships thrive on these protective factors, they're called in the research, which is things like time to communicate, time to rest and enjoy each other's company, time for intimacy and sex, all of those things. And becoming suddenly parents, those things often just go out of the window and you don't have those protective factors anymore. And I think it can be a massive, massive shift for people, and sometimes kind of unexpected that it's going to feel that hard to negotiate. And as part of my work, I do some teaching with pregnant couples and sort of try and introduce some of these ideas and things, but you don't know what you don't know. You can't
Yeah.
imagine what life is going to be like
Sure.
until your baby's there, and all of the stresses and the changes that can bring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause I think, and just reflecting on what you were saying there, I just remember when I had my first child, for me, it was the sleep. The sleep deprivation was severe,
Mm.
and what that meant for me personally was that I felt like I sort of turned into a bit of a robot and
Yeah.
was just kind of doing the, physically taking care of the baby, making sure baby was okay, and my husband just sort of just moved out of my peripheral view, like I almost like I didn't see him
Mm.
anymore, even though he was there.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, it was back in the days when you got 2 weeks paternity leave and then he was off to work again. But it was difficult to sort of hold him in mind.
Mm.
Is that do other women say that, or the partners say that about sort of being in a relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. When you
Yeah,
mentioned the sleep deprivation, changes in sleep, like, yeah, often you don't have capacity to focus on somebody else's needs. Maybe your partner's having, I don't know, a challenge at work or something like that. And I often hear people say, like, I just don't care. Like, deal with
yeah,
that on your own. I've got to focus on the baby. And I think there's that sort of, those crucial months or whatever
hmm,
at the beginning when mother and baby do need to be kind of connected in that way.
sure,
And that sort of blocks everything out. But it can really sort of interrupt connection
mm,
as well in the
yeah,
couple. And yeah, something I see quite a lot is resentment in that case.
okay,
Somebody is having, maybe it's the partner's having needs, and
mm,
there's not enough space for those needs because you've got the needs of the baby. Yeah, or the relationship has changed so much that it can lead to a lot of resentment.
yeah, absolutely. So in terms of that difficulty and that emotional connection, what might be some of the changes? What sort of changes do you see within that area?
There's often a sort of change in communication, I see. So when you have a
Okay.
baby, a lot of conversation sort of naturally moves towards baby
Sure.
logistics and sleep and nappies and all these sorts of things. And that in turn kind of offers less sort of moments of just reflection or asking about the other person or dreaming together, all these sort of things that
Mm,
you might have kind of taken for granted when you were less tired or less kind of
yeah.
stressed by things. And that I think in turn does affect this emotional connection. Alongside that, I think there's often such a big change in identity that comes with parenthood
Mm,
for both mothers and fathers. And it can be hard to kind of accept that the other person has changed as well, or that they're going through a
sure.
massive sort of adaptation and growth and transition, because naturally you're just consumed with what it feels like for you to be in this
Yeah.
new role. So I think you can kind of miss each other. And I often hear couples talking about, oh, we just feel like ships in the night. Like maybe
Mm,
we'll meet to talk about, I don't know, maybe what we're eating for dinner, or sit down after a totally exhausted day. Both people are sort of stuck in their phones and they go to sleep in separate beds because the baby's going
yeah.
to wake up. All of these sort of, there's just fewer moments of, yeah, kind of emotional ease and connection, I
Mm,
think,
mm.
um, which
Yeah,
is
it's
to be expected,
absolutely.
but it can feel really difficult.
It can be such a big shift, can't it? And I think with your first baby, that could feel like a real shock
Mm,
because, as you said earlier, like you can have an idea of how it's going to change your life, like becoming a mother or a father. But I don't think the sort of, how it will change our relationship maybe comes up very much in your mind. When you're pregnant, you're so focused on getting through the pregnancy, and then you're
mm,
thinking about the birth, etc. So yeah, it can be very difficult, can't it? And I guess I was interested in your thoughts about first baby versus second baby in terms of the changes in a couple's relationship, because it's very different, isn't it?
mm.
Second time round, I think.
Yeah, I think that first experience of becoming parents is like, can feel like a sort of grenade into your life and
Right.
relationship in a really beautiful way. You're working out how to be a parent and what your baby is like and what they need. So then with a second, it's perhaps less of a big life shift, but actually perhaps less time, less downtime. I remember with my partner, when we had our second, we would really sort of divide and conquer. You do bedtime with her, I'll do bedtime with him, right? And those incidental times of meeting together, maybe walking with the buggy or whatever, it felt like, oh, we're really separate. And that, I think, can be quite unexpected. But then also, you're perhaps more confident with your second, and you know that you've gotten through difficult times before, that the challenges of sleep and feeding and all of those things, on the whole, they pass, and you know what to do. And there's a sense of maybe a strengthening in your team, the couple that you can do difficult things, and you know that most stuff will pass and it's a phase. And so I think it's both, isn't it? You're kind of more confident, but also there's still a massive change. And also the differences in children as well. So I have 2 children, and they're both very, very different personalities, different needs. And I sort of thought, oh, we know what to do with this one. she's this way. And then second baby came along, just had completely different needs, and we had to really sort of adapt and learn how to do that. I think that's a lot of people's experiences, is having to sort of shift and change and adapt quickly and on the job.
Absolutely. And I really hear what you're saying there about, I think when you have 2, as you say, you divide and conquer. So whatever you're doing, particularly when you go out, it's like one parent has got eyes on the toddler or however old your first child is, and then the other parent has the baby. And I think with that, there's 2 things. It can feel like you're part of a team, and that can feel very connecting. But on the flip side, because there is that perhaps division, maybe sometimes you don't quite connect. So I think it can go both ways.
You're sort of working towards the greater goal of your family, know, everybody getting to sleep, everyone getting fed, whatever the tasks are. But perhaps doing that more on your own if you're having to divide and conquer those things.
So one of the main, I think, challenges being in a relationship with someone just generally is communication, isn't it? So I wanted to think with you about sort of the most common communication breakdowns that you see with the couples that you work with.
So we mentioned it before, but I think lack of sleep, being generally sleep deprived, does not make anybody their best version of, most sort of patient and communicative self. So I think always adding in a massive dose of compassion, like wherever you're going, wherever you're trying to have these conversations, you're going to be doing it from a place of depletion often. And that, I think, can be why conflict is so common in those early months or years of, if you're already on the edge, you're more likely to have conflict. I think there's often as well sort of different styles of doing things. Of course, different parents come from different family cultures themselves, and there might be different ways of approaching challenges or different parenting styles. Something I see quite often is mums who might feel as though they're putting a lot of energy and time and effort into researching, reading books, maybe, getting lots of stuff from Instagram or whatever about how they want to parent, all the particular things they want to do. And then they might have spent a long time sort of thinking about these things, and then they come to their partner saying, we need to do baby-led weaning, and we need to do. And the partner who hasn't been thinking about this might be like, okay, wow, where did this come from? And then sort of have a defensive response. And then the mum in this example feels then not listened to, not appreciated, not seen, and then it just creates a fight, which seemingly might be about avocado in that moment, but it is something much bigger, can tip into something much bigger. Something I see particularly, so I work in the Netherlands with couples, and it's quite often an English couple, because I'm English speaking, with, say, a Dutch partner or a
Yeah.
partner from somewhere else, or lots of people move here from the whole world. So very different cultural expectations of parenting quite often, or what you might need or do, or how you sort of approach stuff. But I think also on a smaller scale, me and my husband are from the same town in Kent in England, and we still have incredibly different family cultures and how we sort of will approach things. So I think sort of being able to talk with your partner about those differences and notice them, without judgment as much as possible. All the ideas are coming from somewhere. Yeah, I think, of course, money issues and financial strain as well causes a lot of communication difficulties and conflict, and it can be hard to talk about that. So I notice quite a lot in the mums that I meet who are on maternity leave and perhaps have less income, feeling like they can't buy things for their baby, or they have to maybe ask permission from their partner who is, and vice versa. A partner who's out to work might feel a lot more pressure to perform or to get a promotion or to work late, all these things. So just being able to notice that strain and talk about it in some way, which can be really hard, I think.
Yeah. That's definitely something that I've come across when working with new dads, is that huge sense of, it's not a sense, it is a huge responsibility. And I think dads can, as you say, really feel that pressure to be the provider. If your family is set up like that, it could be the other way around, of course. But certainly the dads that I've worked with, that can be really tricky. And if you're a dad who maybe experiences anxiety anyway, then it just compounds that, just exacerbates it. But I think in terms of the communication, definitely the sleep deprivation just means that you might be snapping at each other more, or there may be more conflict. As you say, you're going to be arguing about avocado and not, that's a sort of it's an indicator of the sort of deeper issues, isn't it? But it's really easy to get stuck in a pattern of arguing in that way, isn't it?
Yeah, and sort of a bickering, I suppose we'd call
Yeah.
it. You're not listening to me, or she's not taking that seriously, or those things. And what I really like about couples therapy, when you're able to sort of slow the arguments down, or even sort of ask them to say, play it out as though it were happening, is that you can see quite often that underneath these common fights are things like, do you see me? Do I matter to you? Do you notice what I'm doing? Can you see all that I've given up to be with this baby? These sorts of things that, you obviously don't see when you're just arguing about the avocado, but there's something there. And once you can sort of appreciate there's something else there, you want to be noticed, you want to be held and loved and cared for, then it can sort of turn down the volume on those bickering moments, I think.
Yeah. And how much of a difference do you think it makes a couple having friends and family around them, particularly for new parents?
Yeah, I think it does make a difference, of course. There's that old adage, like, it takes a village, and I believe that it takes people who care about you and your family being available. But sometimes that isn't always the people that you would imagine, right? It doesn't always have to be your parents or your in-laws. Quite often, I'm just thinking that it's a really vulnerable time, isn't it, having a baby? And often you sort of invite grandparents or whatever, and they might not be the people that actually make you feel most confident when you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
It could be that actually, your best mate or your sister-in-law or somebody is more helpful to have around in those moments when you're learning and getting to know your baby and all these things. Yeah, and I often encourage couples in pregnancy to think about that. Who actually feels supportive to you, and what would that support look like? And how can you kind of accept offers of help and build in love and support when you're going, in those early months certainly, but after that as well. And I think for my own sort of story, having moved to a foreign country as a foreigner and having to sort of build those family and connections here, it takes some vulnerability and some trust in other people that they can support you in the same way that, your family could. But it's really worth it when you can create a system around you that feels like your whole family can be held, and you can do that for other people as well. And also that support system might be paid support, right? Will be daycares and other babysitters and things like that who can help your family.
Absolutely. And in terms of, I guess what I was thinking there is that particularly when there's a generational difference, they can actually really make things worse, can't they? If you've got
Sometimes,
mothers or fathers or in-laws who are sort of saying, you shouldn't be doing that, or you should do it this way. And that can be very demoralizing, I think, for particularly new parents. So I think you're right. Maybe it's about sort of choosing who's in your sort of inner circle quite carefully in terms of who you feel supported by and receiving that support. Because I think the other thing that can be difficult is to be open to receiving that support, isn't it? And reaching out and asking for help if you're struggling.
Yeah, and I think that can often be a place of shame for people, especially new mums, of, I should be able to manage this, or why aren't I finding it easier, or what does it mean about me if I can't do X, Y, Z, than actually being able to notice that and ask for help or receive offers of support without shame, which is really difficult sometimes.
So for couples who feel like they're drifting apart, which again is a really common experience, what advice would you have for someone listening that's in that position right now? What would you say?
Yeah, it is really common, the feeling of, ships passing in the night and feeling sort of disconnected from each other. And sometimes we can think that to become connected again, you need some grand gestures or, date nights and things like that can feel really far away when you have a young family. It might not be people that you trust to babysit and all these sort of things. So it can feel like without that, we can't do anything. But I think it often starts really small. It's greeting each other in the morning. How was your night? How are you doing? Kiss, cuddle, those sort of things. Finding moments to hear about the other person's day when they come home if you've been separated. Sharing nice texts through the day if you think about something, or these sort of really small gestures that are giving the message, again, you matter to me, you're interesting to me, I love you, all of these things that can sometimes just get lost when you feel like you're drifting apart. And also, as much as possible, having a sort of generous opinion of your partner. And that can be really hard if there's resentment or you feel like you're drifting away from each other, to think of what they're doing as being generous. Thinking generously of what they're doing. Just thinking of an example from my own life, when I had a small baby. He was, I'm not sure, 6 or so months, was really struggling with sleep. My partner came into the room. He'd been up a bit later watching a film, kicked the bed, opened the drawer, got the things out. Baby woke up. And I think this is a really common experience. I was absolutely enraged. How could he do this? Why doesn't he think about me? He doesn't care. All this story about those things. And it was actually very far from what he had intended to do. He said he was tiptoeing around. He's so sorry. And in a different version of events, if I'd been able to have a sort of generous interpretation of that, I might have been less fueled with rage and less kind of felt less kind of disconnected from him in those moments. And I think from the couples therapy I do and from the couples I speak to, I think that happens a lot, where you might just interpret your partner's intentions in a way that is not what they meant to do, or not how they they're not necessarily treating you in a bad way or going against what you need. And I think that can really help to sort of be generous, find little moments to connect.
Before we get back to the episode, I have got something really exciting to share, our brand new Substack community. This is a space where you can peek behind the scenes of the podcasting process and have a space to connect with other fans of the show. As a subscriber, you'll get a monthly roundup of all the episodes in that month, plus my thoughts and personal reflections on each one, completely free. But if you want to go deeper, a paid subscription unlocks exclusive perks like never heard before guest mini episodes, subscriber only chats, digital downloads, and even the chance to shape future episodes. If that sounds good to you, head to the Substack link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the episode. And would you say that those little moments of connection, would you make that explicit? Would you say to your partner, right, I think we need to have micro moments of connection, and how can we do that? Or is it more sort of organic and fluid?
I think it depends on the couple. I think if both people have noticed there's a drifting away and they're willing to make changes and they're committed to doing something different, then yeah, you could think, well, okay, let's schedule in 10 minutes at the end of the day when we know there's a quiet moment. I really want to sit down and talk to you about this article I've read, and you can read it as well, or whatever the version of that might be. And to sort of, it can feel very connecting to set yourself these kind of tasks or homework type thing. But equally, it might just be something that you sort of think in your own head, I'm going to put in a concerted effort to say hello to my partner, which sounds so silly, doesn't it? But often when you're just in the whirlwind of family life, your partner comes home and you're like, okay, you get on with things, sort of thing, rather than actually sort of taking a moment to connect and think of them.
And I think in my own experience, I remember like going out for walks together with baby, and then when we had my my second child, like going for a walk in the woods was the moment, was the half an hour that we could just chat about whatever, whether that was the week that's just gone, or some issues that had come up, or whatever it was. That was the connection time, and that was what I always sort of looked forward to, and tried to make sure that that's what we did. Occasionally, wasn't always possible, but
I think sometimes even the intention can be important. It might so happen that it doesn't work out that you have enough free moments, but the intention, I really want to connect with you this week. I'm really looking forward to the weekend where we can get that walking time that I know we both value and enjoy.
And even, I guess, sort of making an effort to maybe have dinner together, like sit at the table rather than in the lounge on your having dinner on your lap kind of thing.
Yeah, well, lots of couples say cooking together is a moment, it's as good as obviously it's a lot more effortful, but you're side by side, you could you stir, it can be a nice moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So are there any sort of little habits or routines that couples can do to stay connected during what is the sort of chaos of parenting?
Yeah, I think it would be those small moments, like I was mentioning before. I think acknowledging each other. I think a big thing can be appreciating each other. Saying thank you. Thank you when you woke up in the night and did that nappy. Thank you for taking baby this morning. I really got some rest in. Not just because it's part of their role as a parent, you can also appreciate that and also say thank you for that, and sort of building in that appreciation and gratitude into your life as a couple can be really powerful. I think some of the things we've already mentioned about finding space and moments to talk, be that outside the house or inside the house. And the same goes for sort of your sex life and intimacy as well. That's often something that kind of goes completely out of the picture, either because your body's changed so much during pregnancy and birth, and lots of kind of low confidence and body challenges in that sort of after birth time. But I think intimacy often starts with those sort of small moments of connection, feeling safe with your partner, feeling able to have a joke together, feeling like you're listened to, all of those things. And then kind of sexual intimacy can follow at the time that feels right, but also making time to cuddle and kiss and notice each other in that way, and being sort of light with each other can be really helpful as well. So in terms of habits, I don't think I would say anything sort of specific, but just having it in mind that it might take a little bit of effort, but having those moments of connection are often really worth it.
Yeah. And I think something that I've learned is that, I mean, when you're in it, when you're in that young children phase of your relationship or your family life, it feels like it's going on forever and ever. But then suddenly you sort of realize, actually, that didn't last very long. And all the while, your family dynamic, your relationship with your partner, it changes. It goes through those different seasons. So even if it is feeling like a real, like you're sort of wading through treacle kind of feeling, it does change, and hopefully it gets better. And I was really curious about, we were talking about the communication earlier, weren't we? Because I think that is a massive thing with couples. Do you call them communication cards?
Yeah, conversation cards.
Conversation cards.
So
Can you say a little bit about those?
Yeah, they're called stick together cards, and there's 40 questions and prompts split up into 4 areas. Sounds more complicated than it is, but we've got the family values, intimacy, practicality, and looking and learning about you. And the idea is that you would just take a card. It's got a question or a prompt on there, and it just sort of opens up conversation. So something I found a lot when talking to couples is, they want to connect, they wanted to learn about each other, but often feeling like, oh, my brain can't come up with anything, or I have no capacity for anything interesting. So these are just sort of just little prompts that maybe you could take on a walk in the woods, as you say, or have a moment in the car. I've had a lot of feedback that people have been using them on car trips and kind of feeding. Right. They can kind of chat whilst baby or kids are asleep in the back, sort of thing. But they're just an opportunity, a way to kind of learn about each other and feel a bit more connected.
I think that's a great idea. I wish I'd had them when I was back in the day in babyhood. And maybe something nice to have just on the coffee table, and when you're sat down, you can just let's do a card. What's your favorite question, if you can remember them all?
Favorite question. One of them is, what lights you up about being a parent?
I love that.
I think I like that because we often talk, we've spoken today, haven't we, mostly about the challenges of parenting and the struggles, but actually it's such a unique role, and what sort of makes you feel proud about that, and what do you find fun, and what lights you up about that, what's sort of unexpected. And to learn that about your partner as well might be something that is surprising, or that you've not thought about.
Yeah, because as you say, we've been focusing on, I guess, the more the struggles and the more kind of negative aspects, but there is something, I think, really amazing about watching your partner become a parent and navigating this different phase of your life together, because it really feels like you're building a life when you start having a family, and that's so special, I think.
It's really it can be really beautiful to think how they're growing and changing and adapting to the challenges, and of course you see a side of your partner that you wouldn't have had any access to before, and nor would they, and that is really special.
So what would be your one takeaway? So for people that are listening that are in that situation where they're just about to have a baby, or they're in the middle of, having a couple of kids, what would be the one thing that you'd want them to take away from our chat today?
I suppose to expect a shift. Right? Just like when you when you go through any big life change, there'll be a shift, and that, I think, when you can expect that there's going to be changes and shifts, and that's not doom and gloom, it's just sort of acknowledging that it's there. It can feel less hard. You can be like, okay, like, well, I knew that this was going to feel difficult. We might feel disconnected for a while, but I think it will change and shift and might require some effort, but we can get back together. And that in becoming parents, you're becoming a different version of your couple. You're a team now working towards the bigger goal of your family. And I think that can be really motivating as well. It's not just you two, it's something bigger than that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I would say.
No, that's great. Thank you, Naomi, so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Hello Therapy. If you found it helpful, don't forget to subscribe, follow, and review. You can get more well-being and mental health tips by joining our email list and visiting the resources section of our website at harleyclinical.co.uk. The Hello Therapy podcast and the information provided by me, Dr. Liz White, is solely intended for information and educational purposes and does not constitute personalised advice. Please do reach out to your GP or a mental health professional if you need support. Until next time, take care of yourself.